I've had the opportunity to try a lot of cases. A lot of lawyers go to law school, take the bar exam, become licensed, and they never get to see the inside of a courthouse. And my experience has been the exact opposite. I've tried more than 120 cases now, both in state and federal courts in Tennessee and across the country. We've been able to go to states on the East Coast, the West Coast, Midwest, Southeast, wherever our clients' business has taken us. And most of what I've been involved in is what you'd consider to be business litigation, disputes between businesses or high net worth individuals for things like breach of contract, real estate disputes, franchise disputes, violations of federal or state securities laws, things of that nature. What I have found over the years is what I imagine you and many others have found, and that is that happiness does not lie in seeking your own good, but seeking the good of others. For the most part, I think selfish individuals tend to be the unhappiest. Those who are really concerned just for themselves likely are not going to have a very happy life, because one of the best definitions I've ever heard of love is seeking the good of another. That is really the basis for, I think, our civilization, our community, our society. When you seek out to do good to others, it not only helps them, it actually makes you a better person. It makes you a happier person. And that's because where love abounds, grace abounds all the more. And one of the things that I'd say pulled me into this race 4 years ago, and why I'm back again, is that it becomes more and more clear as I get older that the strength of our community, the strength of our county, the strength of our state, strength of our nation is really in the family. And as the family goes, so goes the nation, because a family is a microcosm of the world. It's a place where, to be successful, you need members who are not seeking their own good first, but seeking the good of someone else. And I think it's really that type of spreading of love that is going to bring our country out of this current malaise it's in, where there seems to be so much agitation, so much hatred, so much dissension between and among folks that used to be neighbors, used to be friends. And hate is not the way out of it. Everything needs to start and come back to a question of love. Love is going to be what moves our community forward. Love is going to be what moves our nation forward. And how does that manifest itself in public life? It manifests itself in many ways, both economic and socially. But one of the things that we have is a country right now and a community where folks work hard, but they end up having so many of their hard-earned dollars that really could go to help educate their children, raise their children, going off to a faraway government in Washington, D.C. One of the things that's sort of happened over the last 250 years that we've been a country is that we've moved away from the model that our founders had for the country, where the control of your life, the control of your community was based locally in your elected leaders. Now, over time, and not insubstantially through the income tax, a lot of that power has been morphed over into Washington, D.C. So we've got a federal government that now taxes too much, spends too much, is totally out of control, fiscally and otherwise. And one thing that's become clear is that problem is likely not to be solved in Washington. I think the answer to that is to return more control, more power to local communities and to state governments. And so one of the things that has been a core of my candidacy, both in 2018 and this time, is to begin to use the Constitution the way our framers drafted it, and that is to require that the federal government not exercise powers beyond those delegated to it in the Constitution. And many of us recognize that that's exactly what the 10th Amendment was passed to do. The 10th Amendment restricts the power of federal governments to those expressly delineated in the Constitution. All other powers and rights are reserved to the states or to the people. And I think one thing that needs to be done is we need to have our state legislatures stand up for the rights that were properly granted to states in the Constitution through the 10th Amendment and use the 10th Amendment to require the federal government to get back to a balanced budget. And one of the things that I've had in mind doing, authorizing legislation or sponsoring legislation that would allow the state to put before the U.S. Supreme Court a case against the federal government and ask the Supreme Court to rule that the federal government has in fact exceeded its constitutional authority by running these astronomical, unsustainable, immoral deficits that are being passed on to our children and grandchildren. That needs to be stopped. It needs to be stopped for the good of the family. It needs to be stopped for the good of our communities. And we're going to bring a little bit of love, I hope, to the Tennessee General Assembly and let the federal government know that it needs to get back within the bounds of the Constitution.